South Africa, welcome to the funeral of a reputation. Today, we are not just watching a political disagreement. We are watching a man who thought he was the law, realize that the law doesn't care about his feelings. Paul O'Sullivan has spent years acting like he's the unofficial fourth branch of government. He's the self-appointed sheriff, the man who thinks he can bark orders at the president and the police commissioner like they are his personal garden boys. But today, the great investigator got caught in a trap of his own making. He's been shouting from the rooftops, acting like a big, tough lion. But as soon as the cage door opened for a real fight, he turned into a very quiet mouse. We are going to look at how Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, a man who actually stays in his lane and does his job, managed to defeat the most boastful man in the country without even breaking a sweat. It's embarrassing, it's hilarious, and it's a lesson in what happens when your ego is 10 times bigger than your evidence. Paul O'Sullivan didn't just lose the match. He forfeited because he was too scared to even put on his boots. But wait, before we get into this absolute demolition of the O'Sullivan myth, I need you to do something for me. If you want to see the truth that the mainstream media is too scared to talk about, hit that like button right now. Smash that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. I am promising you absolute fireworks for the next few minutes. Let's start with the arrogance. Let's look at the man who thinks he's the king of the hill. Please show the video.
Well, I can't second guess what's going on inside the head of a criminal like Mkhwanazi. But the reality of the situation is he's overstepped his mark. It's not the job of a provincial commissioner to start accusing the government, the judiciary, the National Prosecuting Authority, and the Minister of Police, for that matter, of being criminals. And that's what he did today. And I want to see that man fall, and the sooner the better.
Paul O'Sullivan, thanks for talking to us this evening.
Did you hear that? I want to see that man fall. This is the peak of Paul's God complex. He's not a judge. He's not the NPA. He's just a guy with a private investigator's license and a lot of opinions. He's calling a provincial commissioner a criminal on national television like he's reading the weather report. The sheer confidence in his voice is what makes the ending of this story so funny. He really thought he could just say, fall, and the walls would come down. But Paul isn't just a hater. He's a gossip. He loves to act like he's got the inside scoop on everyone's personal lives. He's out here trying to play the part of a forensic investigator, but he sounds more like he's running a celebrity tabloid. He wants to talk about who is sleeping with who and who is buying what cars. He's trying to paint a picture of a police service that is just one big hanky-panky party. Please show the video.
I also received information about a whole lot of other hanky-panky going on during 2024, not only in crime intelligence, but also within the head office of the police, and I'm talking about Massimola's office, where he brought people into his office, for want of a better expression, so they could be his mistress, because he's running a shall we say, extramarital affairs, not with one person, but with several. He's quite flexible. Now, when you've got a police commissioner who can't even look after his own personal affairs, you can imagine what's going on in the police service, police. And that was a fellow by the name of Mkhwanazi. So he was now acting commissioner of police. At the same time, Mkhwanazi appointed Massimola, who's now the chief of police. He appointed Massimola as the acting head of crime intelligence. Now, in those days, the crime intelligence slush fund budget was 98 million rand per annum. Now, that means there's a secret services account where they can spend money on stuff which is unaudited. Nobody knows where the money's being spent or how it's being spent, and there's no controls whatsoever. And in 2012, it was 98 million a year. But with all the goings on with Richard Nhlanhla was so concerned about his own affairs. And because his sidekick, a fellow by the name of Nhlanhla, he had been suspended as well, nobody actually had access to the slush funds. And because of this, by the last month of the year 2012, when the budget of 98 million was about to expire, Masemola suddenly realized, together with Mkhwanazi, that hang on a minute, we've only spent 60 million out of the slush fund this year. With 38 million rand short, we better spend it or the money's going to be lost, gone back to Treasury, because that's the way the police budget works. What you don't spend in a year, it goes back to Treasury and your budget is amended the following year. So what did they do? The pair of them, they went out and bought 35 million rands worth of luxury cars and shared them out amongst the management of the police. Now, that was 13 years ago. That's 35 million rands of taxpayers' funds being divvied up in luxury cars, Jeeps, Land Rovers, BMWs, fancy cars. So you've got all the police driving around now. Well, those cars are probably long gone because they drive like hooligans, but they fit them all with blue lights and then they go around like that. Now that guts me as a citizen to think that my taxes are being spent, money taken from the slush fund so that cops can drive, senior cops, by the way, not junior cops.
Hanky panky. Really, Paul? That's your high-level forensic analysis? He's talking about 35 million rands being spent on luxury cars, Land Rovers, BMWs, Jeeps, like he was there holding the keys. He claims that in 2012, there was a 98 million rand budget for the slush fund that was just sitting there, and Mkhwanazi and Masemola decided to have a shopping spree because the money was going to expire. He calls them hooligans with blue lights. It's a great story, isn't it? It's the kind of story that gets people angry. It makes you feel like your tax money is being used to fund a fleet of SUVs for mistresses. But notice something about Paul's style. He never presents the actual documents in these interviews. He just shouts. He uses big words like guts me as a citizen to make you feel like he's the only honest person left in the country. He's trying to build a narrative that Mkhwanazi is a common thief who uses the police budget as his personal piggy bank. But here's the problem with bullies. They eventually run into someone who isn't afraid of them. Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi isn't a guy who does his investigations on YouTube or through angry emails. He went to a commission, he sat down under oath, and he started dropping facts that actually mean something in a court of law. He didn't talk about hanky-panky. He talked about business interests and international investigations. Please show the video.
The relationship between him and Jairus Beer is something that's an open secret. So could it be that because I mentioned things about his friend that made him to respond like this? I said, this Mr. Paul Sullivan is working in the security industry as a security industry person. He once worked at the airport in Johannesburg, and after that, he then opened his own company. I know of, maybe I can put it here, commissioners, that, as I said, I've got informers. The chief of staff of the Minister of Police, Mr. Nkabinde, used to work for IPID. He has given me files about the modus operandi in IPID, and when he used to be there, the role that Mr. Policeman was playing in IPID. There was a fallout between the two of them. Mr. Paul Sullivan does not mince his words when he speaks out there. He just speaks openly. So I don't want to debate what he's saying. I want him to come before this commission and come and argue the things that I've presented in these past 3 days, that everything is a lie. And he must tell me why he says it's a lie. Not to come here and accuse me on something that he cannot substantiate, but if he's got evidence of it, he's welcome to come. It's an open commission, this. He must come here and say, this is what Mkhwanazi has done, this is what Mkhwanazi has done, this is what Mkhwanazi has done. For me, what I can tell you, what we have picked up, we are investigating. I became aware of this, I registered a case. The case is being investigated in KZN. I hope he also pick up things against me, he registers a case being investigated, and you see the outcome of it.
Now that is how you do an analysis. Mkhwanazi didn't just throw insults back. He went for the motive. He pointed out that Paul O'Sullivan has a very close relationship with a man named General Sibia. He suggested that Paul's crusade against the police has less to do with justice and more to do with his friend's desire to get a piece of the security business at the Johannesburg airport. He's basically saying that Paul is a lobbyist masquerading as a hero. And look at the confidence Mkhwanazi has. He's literally saying, I've registered a case. He's inviting Paul to come to the commission and prove him wrong. He's saying, if I'm a criminal, come here and say it to my face under oath. This is where the match starts to slip away from Paul. Mkhwanazi is playing on a field where rules matter, while Paul is still playing in the mud of the media. But it gets even crazier. While Mkhwanazi is being professional, Paul O'Sullivan is allegedly acting like a low-level debt collector. He's sending text messages to people in the middle of their work, trying to scare them. We have a member of the committee, Mr. Nkabinde, who had to stop the proceedings just to put Paul's investigative techniques on the record. Please show the video.
Sorry, Chair, to disturb the process. I think it's important that I put this message, which I received now, into the record.
Yeah.
As I'm eating there, I received this message from Paul Sullivan.
Yeah.
Get ready, you lying crook. I am going to make sure you spend some years in prison. You were bribed by Mkhwanazi and Mabula. Now you will pay for your crimes, guaranteed.
Yeah.
To the committee that the sooner we call Paul Sullivan to come to the committee, the better. We've heard enough about this man intimidating people, running the show alone, putting his hands where he doesn't qualify to put hands. He must come here as a matter of agents. Before we close, he must come before this committee. We just want to put that on the record, Chair.
Get ready, you lying crook. I am going to make sure you spend some years in prison. Can you believe the gall of this man? He sends a text message to a public official during a committee meeting, telling him he's going to prison guaranteed. This is the behavior of a man who thinks he is untouchable. He's telling Nkabinde that he was bribed by Mkhwanazi and Mabula. He's making these massive criminal allegations through a text message while the man is literally eating and doing his job. It's not just unprofessional, it's unhinged. This is what happens when someone has been told for 20 years that they are the savior of the country. They start thinking that their text messages have the power of a high court warrant. Paul thinks he can just intimidate anyone who dares to question his narrative. Why does he feel so powerful? Why does he think he can threaten members of parliament and the police commissioner? Well, maybe it's because he's been reminding everyone who his students are. Paul loves to drop the biggest name in the country, to remind everyone that he's part of the inner circle. He wants you to know that he's not just a private investigator, he's the man who trained the president. Please show the video.
I was just looking at some of my old scrapbooks, and it was 20 years ago that I was training Cyril Ramaphosa to be a police reservist.
Wow.
Now, yes.
What was he like?
In fact, more than...
What was he like as a reservist? Was he good at it?
Well, strangely enough, there was a company then called JCI. I don't know if you remember it.
Of course I do.
It was Johannesburg Consolidated Investments, and he was involved with that. Of course, we all know what happened to JCI, with or without an involvement from Cyril. But what Cyril was engaged in business by that stage. You know, after the first elections, he decided not to become a parliamentarian, and he went into business, which was probably a smart move at the time because everybody else was eager to become a politician. Now, Cyril and I first met at Wandi's place in Soweto, long before the first elections. In fact, at that stage, we had the, what do they call it, the World Trade Center talks, you know, the talks
Cowardice.
between, yes, Rolf Meyer and his counterpart, I suppose, was Cyril Ramaphosa. And then on the side shows, we had people like Eugene de Blanche and others, you know. who acted as a kind of a damper. But at the end of the day, we got a constitution, we got a democratic South Africa, and people like Cyril, they played a very important part. And we were having a chat, him and myself and Fivers Khan, and Fivers Khan then was the sort of CEO of South African breweries. And the Commissioner of Police then was George Fivers. And George Fivers said, you know, we need to get more people involved in policing. And lo and behold, Khan became so-called CEO, if you like, of the police. I don't think that kind of worked out the way they thought it would. And Cyril Ramaphosa, for his party, decided to become a police reservist. And at the time, I was a head lecturer at the Reservist Training Centre in Houghton, so I had to train him.
And there it is, the ultimate shield. I was training Cyril Ramaphosa to be a police reservist 20 years ago. He wants you to think that because he taught the president how to hold a flashlight 2 decades ago at Wendy's place in Soweto, he is somehow above the law today. He talks about the World Trade Center talks and his history with George Fivers like he's the grandfather of the new South Africa. This is why he acts so untouchable. He's been using his history and his proximity to power as a weapon to silence his critics. He's basically saying, the president is my student, so don't even think about coming for me. He's living in a fantasy world where he's still the head lecturer and everyone else, including the police commissioner, is just a naughty student who needs to be put in their place. But this is where the comedy turns into a tragedy for Paul O'Sullivan. After all the shouting, after calling Mkhwanazi a criminal, after the hanky-panky stories, after the 98 million rand allegations, and after threatening Nkabinde with prison, the committee finally called his bluff. They said, okay, Paul, you have so much to say. You have so much evidence. Come to the committee. Let's hear it. Let's see your files. And what did the untouchable sheriff do? Did he march into Parliament with his chest out? Did he bring the guaranteed proof of the bribes? No. He did what every bully does when they are finally confronted. He ran away. Please show the article. Ladies and gentlemen, look at that headline. Paul O'Sullivan refuses to appear because of threats. The man who sends texts calling people lying crooks and promising them prison time is now claiming he's too scared to go to a committee because of nhlanhlamkhwanazi. It is the most pathetic display of cowardice we have seen in years. He's a lion on the news, but a chicken in the committee. He spent months demanding that Mkhwanazi must fall, but when he was given the chance to actually push him, he stayed at home and sent a press release instead. Think about the irony. He says Mkhwanazi is a criminal, but Mkhwanazi is the one who showed up. He says Nkabinde is a crook, but Nkabinde is the one sitting in the committee. Paul O'Sullivan is the one hiding. He's the one who refused to testify. He's the one who realized that his forensic evidence wouldn't last 5 minutes under real cross-examination. He can bully a journalist or a member of the public, but he can't bully a formal ad hoc committee that wants actual facts, not just hanky-panky gossip. Mkhwanazi won this match before it even started because he knew Paul was a paper tiger. He knew that if you just stand your ground and follow the process, the untouchable investigator will eventually fold. Paul O'Sullivan's ego finally met its match in a man who doesn't care about Paul's history with Cyril Ramaphosa. Mkhwanazi proved that in a real investigation, shouting the loudest doesn't mean you're winning. Paul O'Sullivan's career as the great savior is over. You can't claim to be a champion of the law and then refuse to respect the oversight of Parliament. He's been exposed as a man who uses intimidation and old boy connections to get his way, but when those failed him, he had nothing left. He's not the sheriff. He's just a man with a very loud voice and a very short memory of what actual bravery looks like. Nhlanhlamkhwanazi is still standing. Paul O'Sullivan is hiding behind a lawyer and a threat allegation. The match is over, and it wasn't even close. Make sure you share this video with everyone who still thinks Paul O'Sullivan is a hero. Show them the moment the boastful investigator turned tail and ran. And don't forget to check out our next video